Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're doing an Amazement deck profile. So I'm really excited to show you guys this deck because it's a really amazing deck to play around with. It's a super fun deck that basically uses park attractions to be able to use them against your opponent to gain advantage against them, which is really amazing. I really love the way that it plays. It's a really fun deck and I love the artwork because there's a lot of Easter eggs as you're playing through this deck that you'll see in the artwork for other references to other archetypes, which is super cool. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. And without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the Amazement Ambassador. This card is a fantastic card and is pretty much the boss monster of the entire deck. He has the ability to once per turn, you can banish any number of traction traps from your graveyard and then target that many cards your opponent controls and destroy them. You only use the effect of this card once per turn. And if a trap card is activated, except during a damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, then you can target one of those face-up monsters they can currently control and equip an attraction trap from your deck to that target, which is really good because it basically turns your entire deck into basically the pool that you can use for equipping attraction traps, which is really cool. We then play 3 copies of the Amazement Attendant. This card is really good as well because she has the ability that when this card is normal summon, you get to set an attraction trap directly from your deck. And then quick effect, you get to target one of your attraction traps equipped to a monster and equip it to an Amazement monster you control, or one face-up monster your opponent controls. And you can only use each effect of this card once per turn, which is a really good effect just to be able to equip or be able to grab Amazement cards from the deck. We then play 2 of the new Amazement Assistant. This card is really good. I'm currently playing it as a 2 of in this build because it helps out the deck a lot. And what it does is you reveal an attraction trap in your hand, immediately special summon this card from your hand, and you can also send an attraction trap from your hand or face your field to the graveyard to set an attraction trap from your deck in your spell and trap card zone, but you can only use each of this card's effect once per turn. I really like this card as a 2 of in this build, and probably will going forward, we'll really play 2 of this card. I don't think 3 is necessary, and 1, you don't see it enough, which is why I play it currently at 2. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Amazing Time Ticket. Amazing Time Ticket is a really good searcher for the deck. It has the ability to pay 500 or pay 800 life points to apply these effects. During your turn, you get to add an Amazement card from your deck to your hand, but during your opponent's turn, you get to set an attraction trap directly from your deck, and it can be activated this turn, which is really awesome. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance because you're not going to be super using the extra deck in this deck at all, because you're basically just using your copies of your ambassadors and your assistants to go into some really amazing plays, and then use your traps to go into and control the board. But this card helps you draw into your trap cards that you're going to particularly need to go into some really good plays. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. Now, with the further traps, we're playing quite a few traps, so let's get into these. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Imperial Order because you're only playing 6 spells in this deck. It's not that big of a deal to just immediately activate this card and shut down the board of spell cards, because it's not that bad if you don't have them, but you really want to just turn your opponents off. And at the measly cost of 700 life points, you're going to be able to stop all spells on the field, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Amaze Attraction Rapid Racing. This card lets you target an Amazement monster you control or one face-up monster opponent controls and equip this card to that card. Now, all of your attraction traps have that ability to be able to equip them to an opponent's monster or your monster, and depending on which monster they're equipped to, depends on the effect that you get. So if they're equipped to your monster, then you get to target one card in your opponent's graveyard and change the equipped monster's battle position if you shuffle that card into the deck. If it's equipped to your opponent's monster, increase the equipped monster's level by 1 until the end phase of the turn. If you do, change the target's battle position, which is pretty good because you can mess up synchro plays, which is what the really important effect of this card. We then play a single copy of Amazement Family Faces. This card is pretty good too. It lets you target a monster your opponent controls and equip with this card, or equipped with your attraction traps, and equip this card to it as well. And then when this card is equipped to a monster, take control of the equipped monster. And then while you control the equipped monster, it gains 500 attack, and you cannot activate its effects, and also it's treated as an Amazement monster as well, which is really awesome and helps out the deck a lot. We then play 2 copies of the Amaze Attraction Viking Vortex, which is probably my new favorite of them all. This card has the ability, if it's equipped to one of your monsters, you can once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, negate the attack, and if you do, change control of the equipped monster until the end of the battle phase, which is kind of interesting to give it to your opponent. Now let's take a look at what the effect is if it's your opponent's monster. When the equipped monster activates its effects, return it to the hand, which is kind of neat because it can bounce your cards that you need back to your hand, which is kind of cool. I really like this card and really think it's an interesting card to help you in the battle phase. We then play 3 copies of Amazement Attraction Cyclo Coaster. This card is awesome in the deck as well. It lets you, if it's equipped to one of your monsters, you get to target a spell or trap your opponent controls and send both it and this card to the graveyard. Or if it's equipped to your opponent's monsters, then you get to add an Amazement monster from your deck to your hand. And if you do, send this card to the graveyard, which is really good just to be able to grab any of your Amazement monsters that you might need out of the deck. We then play arguably the best of all the Amazement attractions, which is Horror House. Horror House has the ability that you can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end phase if it's equipped to your monster. If it's equipped to your opponent's monster, you change the equipped monster into face down defense position, which would result in this card going to the graveyard, which is still pretty good because it's basically Book of Moon and it's kind of an effect veiler as well, which is a really, really good effect. You're usually going to want to equip this to your monsters so you can kind of lock down the game a little bit. We then play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence just helps you out a lot in this deck to be able to shut down boards, and it helps out to be able to stop your opponent's card effects. We then play 3 copies of Dogmatic Punishment, because again, you're not going into the extra deck all that much, so being able to send something from the extra deck to the graveyard to pop a monster on your opponent's side of the field is really, really good, and I really like this card in the deck. We play 3 copies of Torrential Tribute because it hurts our opponent a lot more than it hurts us to be able to just blow board, so it helps out a lot in this deck. I play 3 copies of There Can Only Be One as well because we're basically playing the different typings, because your copy of your Amazing Ambassador is a Psychic, your copy of Attendant is a Machine, and your copy of your Assistant is also Machine, so you kind of got to watch out just a little bit with your Amazing Assistant and your copy of your Attendant because both of those monsters are Machine monsters, but other than that, this card is just wildly too good not to play in this deck, and it helps out the deck a lot. For the last 3 cards, we're playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike. The 3 copies of Solemn Strike are just here to stop your opponent's monster effects, and it helps out a lot to be able to stop your opponent's monster effects in this deck with the Solemn Strikes. So that's it for the traps, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Utopia the Lightning. Utopia the Lightning just helps us out a lot because sometimes you will have 2 level 4s on your side of the field to be able to go into your copy of Utopia and then make this card to be able to go in for a 5,000 swing, which is super, super helpful. And your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when this card declares an attack, which is really helpful for this deck. You then play 2 copies of Utopia because the double Utopia is basically just going to help you attack into your opponent using the Lightning to be able to get you a 5,000 attack point monster, and it just helps out the deck a lot. Sometimes you'll just leave this on the field to block an attack, which comes up every so often in the deck, but using the copy of Utopia the Lightning is going to be the main reason that you play this card. We then play a single copy of Access Code Talker because it's going to get us additional pops against our opponent. Sometimes you will go into this card. A lot of times you're just going to hit it with your copy of your Extravagance, so I will say you can change this card out if you're looking for a more of a budget option for this deck. You can change it out for a copy of Borreload, Borrelsword, or Appaloosa, or other options for you guys. Or if you see any of the cards in the extra deck that you want to carry to 3, you can definitely change it out and change them to 3 cards instead of 2. We then play 2 copies of Nightmare Unicorn because it spins stuff, which is super helpful for the deck. 2 copies of Phoenix because it pops spells and traps, and a single copy of Cerberus because it pops monsters. These cards are going to be the main ones that I usually grab out of the extra decks for different situations because the Phoenix popping spells and traps comes up every so often. Cerberus popping monsters doesn't come up quite as much because the Solemn Judgments kind of help out with that, which is why I just played this card as a one-of. And then the Phoenix or the Unicorn comes up the most. Being able to just be able to spin something off the field is super helpful for this deck. We'll play 2 copies of IP Masquerena because the IP Masquerenas can actually let us go into our copies of our Nightmare Unicorn during our opponent's turn, which helps out the deck a lot to be able to go into our Nightmare Unicorns. And for the last 3 cards for the extra, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Elder Entity Entity Nist. Elder Entity Nist is a very, very good card in this deck. You're never going to actually summon this card, but what it basically does is you can use this card with your copies of your Dogmatica Punishment. And Dogmatica Punishment says that you can send a card from your deck to your extra deck to the graveyard, and then pop a card on your opponent's side of the field that's a monster that has less attack points than the current monster had that you sent to the graveyard. So if you send your copy of your Elder Entity Nist to the graveyard, you can pop a monster that has 2,500 or less attack, which is really, really good. And then the Elder Entity Nist will go off because it touched the graveyard and pop an additional card on the field, because this card has the ability that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to target any card on the field and destroy it, which is a really, really good effect to be able to just pop additional cards against your opponent and basically turn Dogmatic Punishment into a pop 2 instead of a pop 1, which is really, really good for this deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope it was amazing, as amazing to you as it was to me, because this deck is just a really, really fun deck. I really love playing around with this deck. It's a super fun deck to play with because basically you're just using the attraction traps to be able to equip to your monsters and your opponent's monsters to get some really amazing effects in this deck. And I really love the artwork of the deck. It's very fun, and as you look at the deck, you'll just see more and more Easter eggs in the deck that you'll see different cards. Like there's Karibo, there's like Winged Dragon of Ra in the Cyclone Coaster, the Horror House is like the Ghost Trick cards, and the Viking Vortex is actually Plunder Patrol, which is really, really cool. And I really love this. As somebody who builds all these different decks, it's really cool to see a deck that incorporates all of them into one, and you don't know what else they might make, which is just what's amazing to me about this deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome awards, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.